They provide, it is an entry-level job. You join it, you apply, you pass the health screening, and you can work with no experience because they provide on-the-job training. It's construction type work, manufacturing, and it's a good opportunity. They have taken a risk and they have hired people. They don't always stay, and so that's sad, but maybe someday we'll have enough volunteers to have job coaches. And so we've kind of added that in our long-term planning. And on the last page, it just has a list of the different organizations that have worked with us. So I just wanted to bring this to council. We have different things that we would like to do in the future. The parking lot events, we have some owners that have actually okayed for us to go into their parking lot and do some community education, kind of like the neighborhood night out. And we have volunteers ready to do that. So we just want to bring this to council for, I don't know, your endorsement as the city, I guess. So you guys can talk about it.
Questions?
How about comments?
Comments too.
I think this is great outreach, absolutely super outreach. And trying, all of you that are in the audience, absolutely kudos to all of you. It is a really difficult thing to get everybody on the same page. And we are a generous community and always will be. And it sometimes takes a lot of education to, as our former police chief always used to tell his mom, don't do it, Mom. Do not give money to the panhandlers. Give your money to Valley Restart or to one of the agencies that actually does a very good job of rehabilitating people. So, but I do have a question, and I don't know if you can probably answer this. Are we seeing an influx from the abandonment of the camps in Santa Ana? I don't think we're seeing them from people in Santa Ana, but I do believe that we're getting people from the desert and some getting hot out there, right? Yeah. Actually, it's been a few months, even in the cool times. So just remember, if they come from someplace else, we send them back with an invoice to the city that says you owe us X amount of dollars for transporting your people back to your community. And the problem is we do have a team that's willing to go out and start surveying on that exact topic, and I'm prepared to even contact the Supervisor Washington and see if he would be willing to make a statement for our city and to the cities in our county altogether. Because to buy someone a bus ticket and say, hey, I heard Hemet is great and they're generous, they can give them that bus ticket. It is not traceable, and we have no way of knowing where or what or who sent them. So we are aware of activity like that. And if anyone ever sees that, please get a license plate number. Oh yeah, take pictures. We definitely need that. But those are my only comments. I just think it's a great outreach and great collaboration. More eyes and ears that we have out there reporting to us what's going on, then it would help also. Yeah. Because businesses don't necessarily know how to respond, and unfortunately we do not have enough SROs or CSOs or police officers to be every place doing this job, or even code enforcement. So, good job.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say your outreach team and your leadership on this has been outstanding. As some would say, a yeoman's job. But, there is the desperate need for those boots on the ground that accomplish so much because they're around it every day. And this team that you've put together has done that. And it's come a long way in a year. And I commend you and your team for the efforts that you have, because you and I work in different areas, and unfortunately mine takes a lot longer. But nonetheless, moving forward. But there's nothing like the day-to-day contact. So I really appreciate what you and your team have done.
Well, I echo the kudos for all the hard work that your leadership has provided and the volunteers that are doing this. As I move around in the community, I'm starting to hear a lot, and people are talking about say no to panhandlers. So the word's getting out, and so I think that there's obviously a tremendous amount of work that went into this plan that you've provided for the council. And I think the comment that I made earlier about law enforcement, the 3 C's apply in this endeavor too. The collaboration and the communication and the cooperation. There is no shortage. You've got a laundry list of them here in your report. There's no shortage of agencies and organizations that are willing and able to provide assistance. The biggest hitch in the get-along, as I see it, is the lack of interest of the people that you're seeking to try to serve. And that's a tough nut to crack. We have, statistically, I've heard percentages of 75% of the people don't want the help. They would rather continue to live on the street and eke out whatever meager living they have for themselves. And so obviously the first outreach is going to help the 25% that really do want help. As I've mentioned before, my wife volunteers every day of the week at the community pantry, and she sees the ramifications of this, and she recognizes the difference of the people that are benefiting from the services. And this is a generous community. They're still sorting through all of the barrels of food that were donated as part of the postal food drive a few weeks ago. And just as an aside, too, a few days ago I went to get gas at one of our local gas stations, and I was approached by 3 individuals with the song and dance that they had run out of gas, and can I spare $1 for some gas? And I said, I won't spare $1 for your gas, but if you bring your car over here, I'll put some gas in it. And they just walked away. So obviously, it wasn't the gas that they were wanting, it was the $1 that they were wanting. So whatever tactic individuals are comfortable employing when they're approached in a similar fashion, I would urge you to say no to the panhandler in whatever fashion it comes to you, and whatever your comfort level is in saying no. Generally, when I just see them walking toward me, I just shake my head, and they get the message and they walk away. But anyhow, kudos to the efforts. And a question for our city attorney, I think, is there, if the city council were to take a position endorsing this campaign or anything, do you anticipate any liability concerns or anything, any potential blowback on the city?
You hire me to anticipate liability at every turn, so yes, of course I anticipate liability.
Spoken like a true attorney.
That's what I do. But honestly, it really depends on what the city's role would be in the program. Is the city funding the program? Are these city employees that are helping do the outreach? Is it simply just a city sponsorship of the program in name, where it's encouraging it to do that? Is it lending its city seal to the measure? Is it lending the name and the decision of the council to that? When you do that, you do end up buying some of the liability for the volunteers that are going to participate in the program. I'm using liability very broadly because I don't know what these volunteers are going to do. I mean, they're out helping people, but the normal case comes about with homeless people that somehow you violated their constitutional and civil rights, and homeless advocate groups will bring a federal 1983 or similar civil rights violation lawsuit. because a volunteer has done something. Might that happen? Yes, it's possible. I don't know how probable that is. Really, to get a handle on that, we'd have to figure out what exactly the program was, what the city's doing, how people are trained, what they're advised not to do, and things like that. So city involvement can have a particularly downside and act as a significant break to programs like this, because we do have to go through a lot of hurdles to protect against the liability thing. So, yeah, you can do it legally. Sure, you can throw your resources into this. You can put yourself behind it. There may be some liability, but there would be steps we could take to help mitigate that.
So would it be feasible to maybe take a stair-step approach if step one could be the city recognizes the benefit community-wide for this endeavor and make a supportive statement, could be step one, and see where that takes us, and then maybe look a little farther down the road for some perhaps deeper level of engagement.
Support and endorsement is something that you can absolutely do. Just because you're publicly supporting or endorsing a program doesn't mean you're controlling it. It's where we move into we're controlling the program that we end up having liability issues. So as long as you don't stray into the city deciding where we're going, who the volunteers are, having a training program for the volunteers, things like that, I think you're safe from liability issues.
Thank you.
So I have a question, because, I think anything's probable these days. But I think that I worry about certainly not supporting the effort by any means, but how far that goes. I mean, we all know how difficult it would be for us today to add any financial support to an effort like this, as much as we would want to. So I think that, oftentimes we have somebody come up to the podium and talk about if for example, Carly wasn't a city council member and was starting this initiative, and we in fact did, gee, that's great, we support it, but how does that affect it since we have a council member? And I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just looking at that perception of how far our liability would go based on the fact that the initiative was started by a council member.
Well, if the program were to remain as it is, the mere fact that the mayor or the mayor pro tem are involved in it doesn't create any liability for the city. They're individuals in their own sense. They can describe themselves as the mayor or the mayor pro tem to describe their personage, as long as they're clear that what they're doing is in their individual capacity. And as long as that happens, the city's not tied to design liability. And again, even the city could even go the step further and endorse or sponsor in some limited way the activities of the group who is running the program. It's only when we start controlling the program in some way that we have liability.
So if there were an event that we as a council would support, and we probably go to, and the event somehow went sideways, as we know it can do. So what could we expect?
Probably too many factors for us to go through in this meeting, because we'd have to know, is it on city property? Was it done under city permit? Did we have city insurance involved? Was there light kind support from city staff? I hate to say it, but those are the kind of things we have to look at to determine whether we're muddying it up too much.
Okay. Good job, though.
One of the things that I want to point out is that I was involved in the very beginning stages of this group coming together, and I can tell you that from then till now, is a huge difference in the positive direction of making a very valuable, positive impact on this community. And I can tell you too that the group of people that's involved, and it's from different organizations, different churches, different nonprofits that are coming together to provide solutions to the problem that we're facing of homelessness and addiction and all that. Just a quick example was that when I was in this room listening to all these different leaders from different organizations speaking and different things that they were involved in and had access to, several weeks later, I came across somebody who, that person that I met in that room had the solution for him. And I was able to get them connected and get that person off the street. So this organization provides huge value to this community. And I think that having council members involved brings credibility, and it also brings goodwill to the city. And people realize, hey, listen, they're actually out there doing something to make this community better. And I think personally, I think they're doing a good thing. I mean, the more people that can get involved in helping instead of just typing, is way better for our community overall. Thank you. This is an agenda, so we do have public comment. So do you have any speakers?
I do.
Okay, good.
Stacy Olson, and she'll have 9 minutes.
Okay. Stacey, welcome. Huh?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. For those who do not know me, it's probably rare. My name is Stacy. I'm the founder of Project Hope, a homeless outreach ministry located here in Hemet. I am also a member of the city's homeless task force, as well as the HOT team, otherwise known as the Homeless Outreach Team, headed by Mayor Pro Tem Carly. I want to thank the City Council for the creation of the Homeless Task Force that began February 9th of 2016, almost 2.5 years ago. I was very excited to see a new interest in facing head-on our overwhelming challenges concerning our growing homeless population. The first few months were used for members to introduce themselves and the programs they represent, as well as discuss the current challenges and resources that were available. Once these basic items were understood, I believed we would move on to the action part. You see, we were originally called the Homeless Ad Hoc Committee, and then it was changed to the Homeless Task Force. I was excited for this name change as I understood what those words meant: to have a task before us that would be diligently undertaken to achieve an end result. However, with the exception of 2 small forums over the period of 2.5 years, no task force member has been given a real task to accomplish. And if they have, we've had no follow-through on it. I personally have never been given an assignment other than to speak briefly at 2 forums about what my organization does. That is hardly a task. At some point, approximately 2 years ago, we started discussing and touring Vista Solutions for Change as a possible option to replicate here in the Valley. Paul Webster from Solutions for Change is also a member of the task force. Approximately 1 year ago, Paul Webster was asked to conduct a feasibility study. That was 1 year ago. This study was to cost the citizens of Hemet $20,000. Paul stated at the July 24th, 2017 meeting that it would take approximately 2 to 3 months to complete. A couple days later, the task force held its first forum at a local church where Bonnie publicly announced the feasibility study and stated it would take 3 to 4 months to complete. Paul also stated during our meeting in July that once completed and approved by the council, it would take approximately 3 years for a sister program like Solutions for Change to be in Hemet. We also spoke of heating and cooling centers to be evaluated and established at this meeting. But 2.5 years later, we still do not have any. In our August meeting, Bonnie restated the time frame for the study again to be completed as 3 to 4 months. During each and every meeting, Paul and or Bonnie would talk about the progress Paul was making on the study, making phone calls, contacting businesses, local leaders, etc. Work was being done on the feasibility study. During our October meeting, 3 months after the feasibility study was publicly announced, so keep track of time frames, 3 months later, we were informed that the study was postponed due to recent changes in city staff and management. It was also announced for the first time that the study could not begin until an MOU was in place, and that had not been done. When I asked who was responsible for drawing up this MOU, I was told that the city was. And they said that they would have it in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. So that was in October 2017. Finally, in December 2017, the council voted yes on the study being done. The MOU now states that the study will take 5 months to complete, not 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 months, starting January 1st. This is 6 months after the public announcement of the study. That would take 3 to 4 months. Recently, I heard a word from a source that Paul Webster is now requesting more time. It has already been 10 months since we first were told that it was being done. Temporarily stopping the study so that new staff can catch up is ridiculous. If the city needs to stop items of action every time that there is a turnover, we are in bad shape. Over the last 8 years, we have had 8 to 9 different city managers. I would think professionals who earn in the range of $200,000 a year would be able to review minutes of meetings or as to be briefed as to where we are in the process without much difficulty. In March of this year, 2 years after the task force was created, we had our second forum. There was a schedule of monthly presentations given out to those in attendance, of future presentations that would be held monthly. April and May public presentations have never been discussed and have never happened. As of yet, we have not spoken in regards to the June community presentation either. Our April and May meetings were both canceled, which, by the way, I received an email 20 minutes before the May meeting notifying me that it was canceled. Hardly enough time to prepare. It is almost a year since the feasibility study was announced, and we still do not have it. Nor is our council or task force committed to an actual plan. Bonnie mentioned in a meeting that, quote, even if we don't go with the Solutions for Change model, we can still use the study in some other way. This is a $20,000 ticket on the citizens of Hemet that was approved without even a secure plan of action or commitment. On the opposite side of the spectrum, in approximately 1 year's time, the HOT team was able to get together a multitude of community volunteers, survey businesses, establish dialogue with countless leaders, put together statistics, graphs, charts based on our findings, and develop a 5-year strategic plan at no cost to the community. We have already had positive feedback from the businesses concerning our Know Where It Goes campaign. Businesses have seen results, and I highly recommend that you support this from a city level. I felt it only fair, after much prayer, to report honestly and transparently as a member of the Homeless Task Force Committee to the community that's looking to us for solutions. It's my experience over the last 2.5 years that their money will not be well spent on this study. And I predict they will see no real action or results from this study or from the task force, except for more meetings with more talk. We have amazing, passionate, and talented people on that committee. And it is tragic that their skills are not being fully put to use with hands-on leadership from the chair of the task force. Let's be honest, with a goal of having a sister facility here in Hemet within 3 years, based on the knowledge that we have with the timeline with the feasibility study, which is now taking 10 months, it'll be like 5 to 7 years before we see it. Who will still be sitting on our council at that time? Over the last 2.5 years, I've done my very best to be open and transparent, sharing my experience and giving bold suggestions with the task force, but with no progress, pushed off timelines, canceled meetings, and no commitment to a vision. It is with much prayer that I now put forth 100% of my experience, time, and talents on the Know Where It Goes campaign with the HOT team. I highly recommend again that you adopt this so it makes it easier for us to do what we need to do for the city with the volunteers we have. As of today, I hereby resign from the Homeless Task Force. I will continue to pray for the healing of Hemet in all areas, as well as the leadership and the citizens. May God bless you and guide you as you move forward. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Stacy. Does council have any more comments?
So we can.
And I'm not asking for any money. I don't need any money.
We don't have any money.
I'm just saying.
It's a good program. It's a good outreach. It doesn't solve and rehouse a lot that Bonnie is working on, but it has to work in concert because there's both the education and then getting the people off the streets for those that want to be off the streets and have a facility that has the mental health, that has the job training, that has teaching people how to take care of their children. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot in that regard, and so I think do we do a motion on this? Do we shake our heads yes or no, or do I say we absolutely as a council need to support this in concept, and then go out to the parking lots when Carly puts on an event?
You have a full range of options. There's not a recommended motion in the staff report or on the agenda. So any of the council members could make a motion, or you can...
And all I'm asking for is an endorsement from the city, because when we're out, first of all, if we don't stand for something, then we stand for nothing. And we have a problem, and we need to take a stand. In our council, this gives us something to stand on. If we were to, as a city, whether it's yours or mine, the task force or the homeless outreach team were to apply for grants, this is a 5-year plan that we could use, and it has all the different things that are in grants, you know what I'm saying, that they like to offer grants for.
You've got to have that structure of that
Absolutely.
coalition of independents or whatever.
And we don't, we are bringing people together and facilitating communication, and that's like the biggest part of what we're doing. So
again, Bonnie had brought up the thing that if we as a council can say this is really a good program and we support it, as individuals we can go out. If advertising for something like this, when it puts the city seal on it, does that add implication of liability for the city itself?
Whenever the city endorses something with its seal, there's an assumption that it is a city program.
Right, and we do not want this to be a city program. We want it to be supported by city council.
and maybe we do want it to be a city program.
If it's city directed, that's when we get into the liability area.
But what's the when you endorse it and put the seal on it, then
that's the added the monetary liability that we end up
the
with.
liability that we're taking with our investments and the liability that we're working on with homeless people out on our streets is a millions of dollars difference.
Yeah,
But
don't agree with
you
that.
You two are on the homeless task force. Whatever. That is why nothing gets done in this town. Don't try to do anything good.
Carly, I don't think that's what we're saying at all. I don't think that's what we're saying at all. At least.
Say what you're going to say.
Well, I can't believe that that's what you got out of, after several of us mentioned how much we appreciate the program.
That's really nice, but we're not going to endorse it. I don't know what else I'm supposed to take out of that. Well, decide what you're going to do. It's fine.
We didn't even do anything yet, Carly.
If that's what you heard, you need your ears checked, my dear. I said we can support this. If we endorse it with the city seal, what does that do to the liability of the city? I said, how many
I wear the
times,
city
Carly?
seal on my name tag when I walk around town.
So since the mayor left, let's have a vote on this. Or you want to say something? 'Cause
Well, I was going to try to float a motion, but I'll wait till the mayor returns.
let's float a motion. Float your motion. Sure, make an announcement.
Solutions for Change study. The Solutions for Change study came in today.
There you go.
You know, and I have to tell you, when we have to go through what we do as far as the task force and getting the MOU and getting all that information together, I have to depend on city creating the MOU, Solutions for Change creating the MOU. We got caught up in, like Stacy said, a couple changes in city managers before that MOU was signed. So that put a crimp in it. I don't think it's and I do know that Mr. Webster, before he even got the contract, was out in the community with the Interfaith Council. Several businesses worked a number of months before he even got the contract and agreement signed. So, do we wish it would move faster? Of course we do. The fact that it didn't, I'm not going to go back and worry about the time it took. My effort is going to be on moving forward now that we got the study. And when I said that even if Solutions for Change isn't something we can wholly implement in this community, there are certainly parts of it that would work likely very well. Just because it works down in Vista or other places doesn't mean that exact same program will work here, but they certainly have a 25-year success rate that we can certainly use what we think will work best in this community based on that study, based on the information that Mr. Webster had obtained. And it would be great if I'd have known earlier that study came in today. In any event, we will move forward in that aspect. Totally different from what Carly's group is doing. That is extremely needed as well. And I commend her for that. There's no question about it. Her team has done a great job. And that's all I'm going to say. And except for the fact that the schedule that was presented to the community was based on the Interfaith Council's schedule, not ours. We don't actually do those particular items every single month or every couple of months. It would take so much staff time, and we're grateful that the Interfaith Council picks that up and moves forward with it. And we are, as council members, at least some of us, are more than willing and able, and often do, speak at these events, and wherever else we can provide information. So, again, I don't think this whole thing meant we didn't support what you do. So, let us wait till we vote before you jump on us.
And Mayor, before you do that, I'm worried that I might have confused some of the council members in my comment about the seal. If the city chose to endorse the program, obviously the city can use its city seal, its name, its logo, in any kind of endorsing material it wants to do. For example, The city often puts together packages that have, a number of different resources in the community that it might hand out to businesses or new residents. Okay, the city seals on that, its logos on that, but that doesn't mean that each one of the programs the city's buying liability for. So certainly if you endorse the program, you can do something similar to that. Endorsements, city seal is on that, the logo is on that. It's only when there's a third entity that is using the city seal or the city's name to run its program that there's an inference that it's the city's program. And I don't know that there is any liability from any program. There's just always the potential for it. That doesn't mean you couldn't take mitigating steps to make sure or minimize if there's any liability.
Well, and certainly it would be beneficial if they went after grants to have the city as a partner, because that certainly lends some credence, additional credence to the organization. And although we aren't a nonprofit per se, it still lends itself as a support item, or as a supporting role and partnership in what they do. So,
Go ahead.
I'm ready to try a motion.
Okay, let me say one thing real quick. I don't think that this program is looking to have the city get in there and operate it. I think that the group that's operating it they don't need the city's help. Exactly, because I think they're doing a great job, and I think the city would just get in the way and slow them down. With that, I think that what's important about having the city backing of it in not necessarily a sponsorship, but an endorsement of it, is that it gives the group the ability when they're out and about, if they need to set up and to set up and do the get the word out campaign, when there's panhandlers around, and these guys can get out and get out there and not have to worry about, did I get a permit for this? Do I need that kind of thing. To me, it will help it'll help them be able to streamline and get things done faster, even faster than they are now. So, go ahead.
Okay, well, notwithstanding all of the very valid points that Stacy made in her presentation, that was very well organized. Thank you for that. And being the comparative newcomer on the council, all I can do is look forward and try to do something constructive going forward from this point. And the solutions for change may be a component of that, but that's not an item on the agenda for our discussion or action. What is on the agenda is the Know Where It Goes homeless outreach program. So I'm going to coin a country western song titled by Aaron Tippin, and it's called, no, I don't have my boots on, but the song title is, You've Got to Stand for Something or You'll Fall for Anything. And I'm willing to float a motion that the city of Hemet endorse the Know Where It Goes homeless outreach program as being beneficial and a viable program to address the homeless problem in our community.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? No other discussion? Okay, let's vote. Yes, please. One more left. I reset it. There we go. Okay. Very good. And that motion passes.
I did mean to abstain, and thank you.
All right. Moving on. Number 18, preliminary fiscal year 2018-19 operating budget. Finance Director Rocha and City Manager Parker.
I mean? In order for us to complete the budget, we have optional balancing measures, and I need some guidance for the council, or just dump it on me, I guess. The assumptions are that the state auditor is looking for a 5-year scenario to eliminate the annual structural deficit of $3.4 million. Therefore, the balancing measure cannot simply be a Band-Aid for the 18-19 fiscal year. I can do the Band-Aid if we need to do it. The surplus experienced from the sale of refuse operation, which was used to balance the budget, has almost been expended. What's left should be held in reserve. The 20% reserve should be left for emergencies. CalPERS and medical costs will continue to rise. Expenditures will continue to outpace revenues. And without my opinion is, and you don't have to go along with this, obviously, without some participation of Measure U, the annual structural deficit cannot be eliminated. You can use the Measure U funds to pay for the public sector salary increases. That's $1.5 million, and those salary increases will experience percentage increases over the next 3 to 4 years. We expect $1 million to $1.5 million surplus, starting with the year we're in and the year next year. We can use that to help balance the budget, or we can do both of these options for $3 million. Other measures, institute a hiring moratorium, which would not impact Measure U funded positions. There's a savings estimate of $1 million there. We have certain exceptions need to be determined by the city manager, and certain decisions may have to be filled. And we would eliminate any equipment replacement for next year, saving $500,000. Go ahead. We need to seek out other sources of revenues. For example, we're taking a look at the cannabis situation, but that will take 2 years to implement, and there's a good chance that the state measure will send this whole thing southward somewhere too, that we may not be able to implement it. And what we can do is reassess the organization and its delivery of services towards achieving economies. We can do this in-house. Chris and I can do this. And the cost savings at this point are unknown, but we could start taking a look at contracting this and that out, et cetera, and just looking at the manner in which we provide services. Go ahead. Okay, my recommendations, and again, you don't have to follow them, but I'd like some guidance so we can finish up the budget. We can use the Measure U funds to pay for the public safety salary increases, $1.5 million. We can use Measure U funds in excess of the surplus we're going to experience. That's over the $10 million that police and fire get annually. Institute the hiring moratorium, impact Measure U funds, savings of approximately $1 million. Go ahead, flip it. Seek out other sources of revenue, reassess the organization and its delivery of services towards achieving economies. That's really it. It's just, in a way, I'm picking up the low-hanging fruit because of the Measure U being there, and I'm not going to deny that. But it's the only thing that enables us to end the deficit structure, the structural deficit. We can use that to build off and carry us to 5 years, so that we're out of the structural deficit again, and we can get out from the onus of being under the watchful eye of the state auditor too. The state auditor will not accept anything other than a 5-year program showing that we get out of the structural deficit. So, you guys want to talk to me? That would be helpful, and then we can finish up the budget. Lorena has passed out, if you have it, what we've done so far in the budget, and again, we'd like to finish it up by taking whatever policy recommendation you give me. It's not a matter of what I prefer, it's a matter of what you prefer, and then we can finish up the document.
Okay, so I got a comment and then a question for you on the measure, using the Measure U for the funding. First, the comment is that in the resolution that we all had signed for the Measure U money, one of the key provisions in there is that that money was to be used for public safety, and hiring and retaining was part of that in the resolution. My question to you is that if the surplus above the 10 million was used for that MOU for the officers, the current officers and the future hires, how is that going to affect further future hires moving forward from what we don't have today, but we are looking to add as part of that Measure U plan for public safety?
Shouldn't affect it at all, because they're still getting their $10 million to split between police and fire. And their plans moving forward were predicated on the $10 million a year. It just so happens that the Measure U is trailing sales tax, and so they being HDL that provided the estimate, have underestimated the $10 million is going to be closer to 11 and 11.5 million. So shouldn't affect at all. They're both here. They can nod. They cannot nod.
I don't know if the
their
chiefs
budget is not predicated on the extra million.
And it'll be up to you if you want to have them come up and comment, but the plans for both police and fire were the plan moving forward from year 1 to year 10 was the assumptions were based on $10 million a year. Is that correct?
He's shaking his head here.
Okay, so I'm getting the yes no. If you could, Chief, please.
That is true. It's just a little bit more technical than that. And without me looking at the true numbers, I can't comment that if we would have enough to roll over. The city manager and the finance director are saying that we do, then I have no reason not to believe we do. The difference between Measure U and our normal budget process is the reserve that's left at the end of every year needs to roll over into the next year to continue to fund that process. So if we're dipping back in and it affects that to a certain extent, we may have to subside on what our original plan was. But without looking at the numbers, I have no idea.
Let me ask you this real quick.
Anticipating do that. The surplus from the existing 10 million will roll over like it's supposed to. The 1 million, million and a half surplus I'm talking about is more revenue coming in than was expected.
And above that. So that was my follow-up question, is that you're not spending that 6.6 million every year that's been allocated out of that 10?
No, because then I could not fund what we need to do the next year. It's purposeful savings.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, we're still trying to increase revenue to the city through additional businesses and people spending more and buying more in the state.
I sure hope so, and I think he does too.
Okay. Because I know that I've made the comment even when I was running and right after I got elected that we need to continue to raise our sales tax revenue at least by $1 million a year every year moving forward, so that way when we get to year 10, we've got an additional 10 million in sales tax revenue coming in, so that we can then Measure U could be sunsetted if the people chose to sunset it. We still have the revenue coming in to pay for all the officers and all that we.
$1 million a year is a big Costco. I mean, that's what floats it into a degree, Sam's. And because of our lack of location, no freeways. We're not going to get a Costco or a Bass Pro or anything like that. So it will be harder. This took a long time for you to go get the structural deficit. It took a long time, and maybe 8 city managers or whatever, but it took a long time. And we're not going to get out of it in 1 year. As hard as we're going to try, we're not going to get out of it. The use of the surplus Measure U funds will facilitate our ability to get out of it, period. That's all I can say. If we don't use, say the surplus, $1 million, $1.5 million, that's going to come out of surplus in order to balance the budget. So you'll get a balanced budget one way or another. I'm just trying to make it easier, if you will.
Keep it on spending for public safety, but
I think you must be first. So here's the issue I have, and that is we haven't gone over anything yet. We don't know what we've done yet to mitigate the budget shortfall. We haven't discussed anything that the departments are doing to help with the deficit with regards to pulling back a percentage in their budget. None of this has been discussed or gone over. And I find it difficult then to sit here and make a decision of yes or no, or how we want to proceed without having that other information. And I don't know what we've done all year in order to the accomplishments we've had this last year, the staffing changes, just what things that we've done in the interim, knowing that we were going to most likely have a deficit. And I'm not hanging it on you. I'm just saying that in order to sit here and make a decision, it is unrealistic. I mean, not enough information for us at this point to be able to come in and offer our suggestions until we know what all has been done this year, looking forward to this night. So it all sounds well and good, but how do we know there isn't something else? How do we know, based on the fact that no other information has been given to us?
I appreciate that point of view. The only defense, if that's a legitimate statement, is that it's a rollover budget. It's basically the same budget that you approved the current year that we're in. No remarkable changes or anything like that. And so what I was really focusing on, and you know, we'll go through the budget page by page if you wish. What I was really focusing on was the structural deficit, and it's 3.4 million this year. It'll be 3.4 million next year, and how do we address that? And so,
well, you know, that's the thing. 3.4 million last year, 3.4 million this year. Well, what the heck? What has been done in the interim so that this doesn't happen? So that we aren't maybe we're 1 million, but I just want to know those things. How are we trying to fix it along the way? So, you know, and as far as the Measure U money, here's how I look at that. And I am steadfast on the fact that we promised that we would not use that money for anything else other than public safety. However, the raises that we gave couldn't have happened to make us more competitive if we didn't rely on the Measure U money to make that happen. It was for public safety. So, you know, that's where I'm a bit conflicted, because we needed to do that in order to make us more competitive, to get the officers we need. So that was public safety money, but it came out of the general fund. So, I don't know. I didn't think there was enough discussion last time on what we were given. I mean, we get this tonight. How the heck are we supposed to know what's in it? I mean, and make a decision on anything.
No.
So,
well, the statement was made you wanted that document, so we got you the document, and next time we'll discuss it.
yeah, we
And we're not trying to vote on it tonight. This is just the next step.
I know, but we're asked to, you know, provide input or provide a policy that we haven't had time to really vet it out. So, I don't know.
When is staff expecting for this to be voted on and approved? Not necessarily what's in here now, but
Well, probably around June 30th.
okay.
That's a good date.
So we still have a month to be able
And
to.
you can also just roll over the existing budget for 90 days or something to give yourself an opportunity to go through this in the detail that you want to go through it in. The budget is a plan. It's just a plan. not cast in concrete or anything. It can be amended at any time. My effort here is to try and give you a balanced document, to take a look at what's happened in the last 10 years and such, and see if we can start to remedy that.
Linda, did you have?
Yes, I have a couple questions and a comment. This is a rollover budget. Has any attempt been made to ask department heads to cut their budget by 1%, 2%, or 3%?
No.
Will you do that?
No, they've gone through that, and my opinion is most of the departments are understaffed anyway.
I thought I just cut 80,000 out of somebody's department, so let me do it. My next question is, how many currently vacant positions would be in the hiring freeze? Because if they're currently vacant, take them out of the budget completely.
I have no idea.
Did you find that
at
out?
this point, sure.
Appreciate that. And also your comment about that a lot of industry or businesses won't come here because we are not on the freeway. I'm assuming we're going to have a meeting soon on ICSC and some of the conversations that took place up there. But one conversation or bit of information that we received, or I received while there, was regarding the restaurant, the Golden Corral. And we've been trying for a long time to get them to come to Hemet. And their corporate comment was, we don't want to cannibalize another store's market, and there are so many people from Hemet now who keep the Lake Elsinore store going that we're not coming to Hemet because those people will drive to Lake Elsinore anyway. So I got news for all of you. Eat in Hemet. Don't go to Lake Elsinore. Don't go to Temecula. Don't go anyplace else. Eat in Hemet, and let's demand that we get some good restaurants in town. That's my comment. Thank you.
Russ?
I have a comment and a question. Looking at Resolution 4703, we have a copy of it that was provided to us in an email. Under Section 3A, it talks about how the proceeds from Measure U can be used. And one of it, I'll quote, the proceeds of the tax may be expended on any and all regular and special expenses incurred for the operation and the provision of public safety services. And it talks about mutual aid, that it says, but not limited to wages, benefits, and deferred compensation for police and fire personnel, and the pro rata shares of such costs for other city personnel that support police and fire services. So in the resolution that we passed and adopted, it's lawful and legitimate for us to use Measure U funds for those salaries and wages. So my question is, having that in there and knowing that we all signed Resolution 4731 that says we're going to abide by this, but the Measure U Oversight Committee has specifically stated that they do not want to see Measure U funds used for salaries and benefits. So I'm a bit conflicted on what the rationale is for that, knowing what our financial situation is. I'm sure the Measure U Oversight Committee is aware of the deficit. We have an instrument at our disposal that would still be directed and comply with the public safety component of the Resolution 4703. So in my mind, I don't really understand